Hello family and friends and fellow YouTubers, it's Kim here from Kim's Country Corner, and today I am at my brother Steven's house, and I am at what I call my own personal bed and breakfast. Anyway, this is going to be my corner of the world for today. He lives in Lebanon, Missouri. It's a beautiful, quaint little town, and he has a beautiful home, which I will show you one of these days. But since today was Motivational Monday, I wanted to share with you a collaboration that is being done by Liz Zorab and Wholesome Roots. And the collaboration is People Who Inspire Me. Now, I did a live talk covering this subject with other people putting in who had inspired them. But I wanted to make a sit-down video just for the collaboration that they could add to the playlist. So this is my collaboration of People Who Inspire Me. Okay, so the number one group I mentioned was the small YouTube homesteaders. And specifically Tess Wagner. Tess is the one that started this Facebook group several months ago, and since then it has grown to almost 400 members now. And what it is a group of homesteaders that like to do YouTube to talk about their homesteads and what they grow and what animals they raise, and just kind of cover homesteading topics, canning, cooking, baking, sewing, and share them with other small YouTubers. There are a lot of big fish out there in YouTube land that are swimming around, you know, showing off their homesteads and sharing their information, and that's all good, and I have learned many things from them. So I don't want to knock the big channels, but I want to just give a shout out to these small channels who were all working together. We're all working together to spread the message of homesteading and being more self-reliant and living more simply. I always like that saying that goes, live simply so that others may simply live. And I just think that has a real place in our society today. And then, of course, a shout out to Tessie, who started the group, and she is Homestead Tessie. So if you've not been over to see her, please go visit her channel. She has a lot of different theme days, and they're really a lot of fun. Okay, so the second person on my list was Mrs. Brown. And I do not remember her first name because she was an elementary teacher of mine, so all I knew her by was Mrs. Brown. But she was my 4th grade teacher. And I remember when I was in 4th grade, I was very studious, I was very smart, but I could also be a little bit on the hyper side. And she just knew that I needed something else to spread my energy to, okay, and something to do to help people, okay. She saw something in me. And so she set it up with the kindergarten teacher for me to go down there 2 times a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. And I remember in the afternoon, it was during my study hall period, and I would go into the kindergarten classroom and I would help those small students with like writing their alphabet and counting their numbers, you know, and whatever art projects. And I thoroughly enjoyed that time that I spent in those kindergarten rooms. And I really believe that that is what set me off towards my path of wanting to be a teacher. I also remember that at the end of the year, she would give me the leftover workbooks, you know, that had been used partially, any leftover materials. and I would take those home for the summer, and I would work on them, and then I would make my younger sister Jody, and sometimes even my younger brother, although they were a little bit more complicated for him. But as soon as teachers found out what we were doing, they would pass on papers. But anyway, I would take these leftover teaching materials home for me during the summer, and I would set up my miniature little classroom out on our front porch, and I would make my sister and my brother and all the neighbor kids come in and sit down and play classroom so that I could be the teacher. And my sister Jody can attest to that. And I still, to this day, take a little bit of credit for her education because she ended up being salutatorian of her grade school class. I think she was top 10 of the high school class. We come from a big high school. And then she went on to get her doctorate's degree. So she is now Dr. Strauss. So I like to think that maybe my early influence pushed her down the road of academics. Anyway, okay, moving on. So the next person that I want to mention that inspired me was, and still inspires me to this day, is my 92-year-old friend, Rusty Adam. Her real name is Lorena. Lorena Adam. They call her Rusty because she used to have reddish hair. When I first started teaching, I was 24. I think she was early 50s at the time. And they had given her to me as my mentor. Okay, since I was a first-time teacher, they had taken Rusty and said, hey, help her out along during the school year. And so Rusty started out as my teaching mentor, but then she went on to become my mothering mentor because she was there for all three of my children's births and their growing up years, and she would give me advice, or I'd be the one calling her saying, Rusty, what do I do, and so so she was my mothering mentor. And then she was also a spiritual mentor for me because she's very religious. We both started out teaching in the Catholic school, okay? And so anytime I had spiritual needs, I would often consult her. Now, by mentioning that Rusty Adam was an inspiration to me and a mothering mentor, I don't want to leave out my real mother. My mother and Rusty knew each other very well. They both supported me, and my mother appreciated the fact that Rusty was there for me because my mother lived 2.5 hours away and couldn't always be right there in the proximity, but she knew that Rusty was there where she could make that physical contact with me, and but they would correspond, they would talk, so they were very good friends, which leads me to my next person of inspiration, which would be my mother. My mother was a great inspiration for many different reasons. And I really think that one of her most important influences that she had on me was she inspired me to do the best I could do, and that included academics. My mother was very smart, and she was so smart that when she graduated high school, she was given a full scholarship to the local college. But her mother at the time, my grandmother, would not let her accept that scholarship because that's just not what women did. And, in those days, it was believed that the women stayed home, they took care of the family, the older traditional thinking. So even though my mother was super smart and had this chance to go to college, she wasn't allowed to. until later. And then my mother became a secretary on her own, working on her own, became a secretary. And then after becoming a secretary, she worked her way into becoming a bookkeeper. And eventually she took the test to become a certified public accountant. Now you have to be pretty smart to be one of those and deal with all those numbers. And my mom was also involved in politics at a low level, but between the pushing academics, to, how important they were, and her interest in doing her civic duty, we were brought up with those strong morals about importance of being a good citizen to your community. And then also my mother inspired me because she was a great mother. She was a great home teacher. I mean, we went to public school, but she did a lot of home teaching in the fact that when we had homework, she was right there beside us to help us through it. When we had school projects like the Valentine boxes that I had shared earlier, she was right there ready to encourage us. She would not do the work, as I stated, but she would give us ideas and suggestions and really encouraged us to do the best work that we could do. My mother was also really good about making sure that my brother and sister and I were all involved in activities. My two older brothers that I don't talk about very often because they're much older, but they were in FFA, and I can remember watching them at horse shows, okay? And then when we came along, when the next set of kids came along, she had us in Girl Scouts, in 4-H, in Boy Scouts. My brother was in band. I mean, she really encouraged us to be part of these groups. Not overdo it, but to have a good set of activities that would help to increase our leadership and civic responsibilities. And they were a lot of fun. Oh my gosh, I just love Girl Scouts. And I loved 4-H. And here, this is a cool story. I wanted to do woodworking in 4-H. And so my mom said, well, do woodworking. And I said, but I'm a girl. And there aren't any other girls in the woodworking project in 4-H. And my mom was like, that does not matter, Kilmray. When she would get serious with me, she would say, Kilmray, she said, that does not matter whether you are a boy or a girl. You have the ability, you have the talent. If that's what you want to do, you do it. And so I did. I joined the woodworking group in 4-H, and my father would go with me. I mean, my mother would say she wasn't good at woodworking. She was really good at inspiring me to do woodworking, but she herself didn't know it, but my dad did. And so she would push my dad, you need to go with Kim to these woodworking groups. And so my dad and I, we would go, and I learned a lot of stuff in that group. And came time for state fair, and we had to enter 2 projects. And I entered a boot jack and a birdhouse. And I was a little bit nervous about it, but I went to the state fair, and both of my woodworking projects brought home blue ribbons. That means they were top. But what was the best thing about it was my boot jack had gotten best of show. And so here I am, the only girl in our woodworking club, and out of all the people that were in our county competing, my woodworking project got best of show. And oh my gosh, I was so proud. My dad was so proud. And so my mother was a great inspiration in teaching all of her kids that if we wanted to do something, by golly, you just go out there and do it, And okay. And so the next person that inspired me was my dad. And Whereas my mother was like the academic, the civic, the leadership, those kind of roles. My dad was the love of nature and the love of art, the love of photography, and so my dad would take us on camping trips. My mom would go too, but my mom would always make sure that we visited the local Natural History Museum, you know, the educational part. But my dad was the one that would take us fishing and show us how to use a fishing rod and tie our own flies on and take off our own fish and skin our own fish and you know, how to build a fire and how to put up a tent and take us on all the hikes. And then my dad was also, he had a love of photography, and so he always had a camera around his neck taking pictures of his kids and, you know, the scenery. And I think because of that, I mean, I don't know if you guys have checked out my brother's pictures on his website, but he is an excellent photographer. And I've told you guys that before. My sister is an excellent photographer. Now, she's not quite as clickety as Steve and I are, but when she does take a picture, it is really good. So, and then I have a love of photography too. So that is where I think our love comes from, is instilled from our dad. And then the love of nature, being outside. So yes, so my mom and my dad. Okay, and then I'm just going to work myself on down through the list and mention my brother and my sister. I did mention them a little bit. My sister, as I said, is a doctor. She teaches at a university here in Missouri. She's very inspirational to me because she's one of those, I am a woman, hear me roar. I can't sing, but every time I hear that song, I am a woman, hear me roar, I think of my sister, because she is such an independent, strong woman, and she believes in the power of women. Not that she hates men, she doesn't hate men, but she does believe in the power of women, and the belief that no matter what sex you are, no matter what color you are, no matter what religion you are, no matter how old or how young you are, if you have a will to get it done, you can do it. And you know, she's very inspiring to me to know that that you don't have to be married. She's not married, but you know that you don't have to be married to have a life. She takes trips all by herself. She's been to Germany several times. She loves soccer, so she gets on a plane, she travels to Germany, and she visits with her German friends, and she does it by herself. If she wants to take a road trip, she hops in that Ford Explorer, I think is what she has, not sure, sorry Jody, and she takes that road trip. So she's very independent, and that is very inspiring to me. Okay, and you know, just the fact that when she wants to do something, she just does it. Then there's my brother Stephen. And you guys have met him before. He inspires me with his artistic abilities. His photography, I've talked about that. And his love of art and his love of antiques, and just his love of old things, I guess. And then he also inspires me because he is a Baptist Dom, which means Director of Missions. So his title would be Reverend Stephen Strauss, but he doesn't doesn't like it when I say Reverend, just like Jody doesn't like it whenever I say Strauss, because they're like, we want to be known by more than just our titles. We're people. But, you know, I feel like they've earned those titles, so every once in a while it doesn't hurt for them to hear it. But anyway, so Steve is a Dom, Director of Missions, and which is kind of like a superintendent of schools, except he's a superintendent of churches, I guess. And he does an awesome job communicating with all of his pastors, and that's also another reason I admire my brother, is how genuine he is. You know, he loves helping people. He doesn't do it because it's his job. You know, he doesn't do it because it's his civic duty. He genuinely loves helping people. And so that is an inspiration to me. All right. Now, after I have, you know, my teacher and my friend and my parents and my brother and my sister, I cannot forget my children. Okay? Each of my children inspire me in a different way. Paul inspires me because he too, like Jody, has a very independent will. Okay, if he wants to do something, he will do it. He is very independent. He has always been very independent. He was my first child, and after him, both of his sisters came pretty rapidly. So he grew up being the big brother, and he has always been the best big brother to his sisters. We don't get to see him as often as we'd like, because he is over in Afghanistan supporting. He used to be in the Navy, but now he is part of a support group. I can't remember what they're called, a government type support group, but or are they independent? Anyway, he is part of a support group that is over there helping the military. Okay, and you know that takes a lot of I don't know, initiative, I guess, you know, to go over there on your own when you know how dangerous it is, and what the results could be, and yet you're like, I want to help my country, and this is the way they need my help, so I'm going to go over there. And he's been over to Afghanistan probably, I don't know, 6 to 8 times now. So Paul really inspires me with his patriotism, and how important it is to support your country. And then there's Karen, my middle daughter, who also inspires me. Because she was in her master's program, her last year of college, and she became pregnant. And during her last semester, she was really pregnant. So she was suffering, you know, morning sickness and swollen feet and, you know, everything. And she still managed to make it to classes on time. She still managed to have good grades, and she still managed to graduate that spring with her son on her hip. So, you know, that is inspiring to know all she went through to get that education, to get that teaching degree. And then she went and taught for 2 years, and when she found out she was pregnant with Emma, she decided that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Now, all during that last year of teaching, though, oh my goodness, she was so sick because Emma wasn't born till May. So, but you know, she hung in there. I mean, even as sick as she was, and you know, she hung in there. A couple of times she had to take off because the doctors would put her on bed rest. She had a medical problem going on. But she stuck in there the best she could, and she did finish up that year. She had Emma on the very last day of school. She was hoping that she was going to make it all the way through the school year, and she had Emma on the very last day of school. But then she decided to be a stay-at-home mom with Emma and Jeffrey this year. And to me, that's inspiring because I was a stay-at-home mom, and I know how important it is to be there with your children when they're young. And I also know how stressful it can be, you know, worrying about money, worrying about insurance, you know, all the worries that go with being a stay-at-home mom. But she did it, and Matt supported her, and so that's an inspiration to me to know that she chose to do that for her children. Okay, she's also a very calm, relaxing person. And so then that leads me to Katie Beth. And Katie Beth is an inspiration because she too is a very strong-willed person. And one of those people that women have power, you know. And she is in her last semester of getting her master's degree in social work. When she went into college to the University of Missouri, she had a scholarship to be in the School of Journalism. As a freshman, it is hard to get into the School of Journalism. Now, yes, they have programs for the Department of Journalism, but that's a little bit different than the School of Journalism. When they had called us in to do a tour of her part, there were only 2 of us, and I was like, where are the other people? And they were like, well, your 2 children are the only ones that were selected for the School of Journalism. And you know, that made me realize just how smart she was. I always knew she was smart because she was like salutatorian of her grade school, just like my sister. She was top 3 of her high school, just like my sister. She's very independent and very woman-powered and very politically motivated, just like my sister. We used to tease that she was actually my sister's daughter, which isn't true, but it was kind of a joke because they're so much alike. But then she decided one summer she did some work at a rehab center, and she loved it so much. She loved helping those people so much. And then she has seen, unfortunately, all my children have seen and lived through some of my mental illness episodes, and she was like, I want to help people like you too, Mom. So, you know, even though she could do anything in the world that she wanted, she chose social work. And for me, that's an inspiration that she followed her heart to do the work that she loves, that she wants to do. All right. Next person on my list. Okay, well, this person is a writer, and that would be Laura Ingalls Wilder. She wrote about her journey during the pioneer days, and I just loved hearing about that history. And so a lot of her stories inspire me to be a better homesteader, okay, because that's what her book is about. I mean, it was written in the 1800s, and you know, back then everybody was a homesteader, I think, but you know, inspire me to be a better homesteader. I mean, I'm just thinking if they could do all of that without electricity, you know, and Mom made cheese without electricity, you know, and had to kill the pig herself, you know, there's no reason that I can't be a homesteader too. So I had to put Laura Ingalls Wilder in there. And if you have not read her books on Little House on the Prairie series, I would suggest. All right, my next inspiration is a group of people. And that would be a group of people who have to overcome medical conditions and yet manage to push through and still live life in a positive way. And when I was talking about this on the live show, you know, a lot of us came up with June Goal. And if you've not been to visit her channel, you might want to do that. It just shows you that if there's a will, there's a way. And, you know, and then like right now, we're all watching the Olympics and we're all watching how, you know, these group of strong people are able to, you know, complete these challenges and compete with one another. Well, in March, it's going to be time for the Paralympics. And I'm thinking, I hope just as many people give respect to the Paralympics as they do to these Olympics. Because although these Olympics are inspiring in the fact that they bring people together, you know, at a time when we need peace around the world, the Paralympics, those guys have to push through some kind of a medical condition, whether it be amputation of legs or arms or, you know, slight blindness, whatever. They have to push through it in order to compete. And I just would love to see the Paralympics get as much attention as what the regular Olympics are. Because I think that anytime there's a group of people that can push through a medical condition and still be positive in life, that has to be an inspiration. You know, my mother was one of those people, going back to her. My mother had cancer, and she had cancer for probably about 10 years. You know, it'd be first bone cancer, or first it was breast cancer on one side, then breast cancer on the other side. Then it spread to the lymph nodes, and then it spread to the bone. And, you know, so for 10 years, she battled this cancer curse. And yet, she remained positive up until her very last month, probably. And in the very last month, we had to put her into a nursing home because she was starting to get bad where she couldn't take care of herself. But I mean, that's a pretty long battle, and she did a really awesome job at it. And that's an inspiration. So those are the people who inspire me. I hope that if you're inspired by my list and other people's list, that you too will join this collaboration. And just make sure that you notify Liz Zorab or Wholesome Roots so they can add you to the playlist. Okay? All right. Well, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you want to know more about me and my little corner of the world, please hit that subscribe button. I also appreciate any thumbs ups and any comments. And I do try to respond to comments, but I don't always get there, but I promise I will catch up with you guys. So, yes, so this is Kim saying bye for now.